Have you ever felt like one person could make all the difference in the world? Until one teacher proved that compassion and courage can change lives forever. This is my story. My name is Clara, and at 42 years old, I discovered that the classroom wasn't just a place to teach, it was a battleground for justice. Until I found the strength to confront corruption and inspire a generation of changemakers. I grew up in a small town where opportunities were scarce and dreams often went unfulfilled. My parents were hardworking people who believed education was the key to a better future. From an early age, they instilled in me the value of knowledge and the importance of standing up for what's right. Inspired by their teachings, I decided to become a teacher, a profession I saw as both a calling and a responsibility. I wanted to give back to my community, to help students realize their potential and break free from the cycles of poverty and injustice that had trapped so many generations. When I began teaching at Riverside High, I quickly realized that the challenges facing my students extended far beyond the classroom. Many of them came from broken homes, struggled with hunger, or faced violence in their neighborhoods. Despite these obstacles, they carried a spark of hope, a desire to learn, to grow, and to dream of something better. I made it my mission to nurture that spark, to create a safe space where they could thrive academically and emotionally. One of my brightest students was Marcus, a quiet boy with a sharp mind and a kind heart. He always sat in the front row, eagerly raising his hand to answer questions and devouring every book I recommended. But over time, I noticed changes in him. His grades began to slip. His attendance became sporadic, and the light in his eyes dimmed. Concerned, I asked him to stay after class one day to talk. At first, Marcus hesitated, but eventually, he opened up. He told me about his older brother, Julian, who had recently dropped out of school and started working for a local gang. He says there's no point in studying, Marcus confessed, his voice trembling. He says this town will never let us succeed. I felt a lump in my throat as I listened to him. I knew the statistics, how few students from our community graduated high school, how even fewer went on to college. But I refused to accept that Marcus's fate was predetermined. I promised him that I would do everything in my power to help him stay on track, to prove that his dreams were worth fighting for. Over the next few months, I worked closely with Marcus, providing extra tutoring, connecting him with mentors, and encouraging him to apply for scholarships. Slowly but surely, his confidence began to return. By the end of the year, he had not only improved his grades but also won a prestigious award for academic excellence. Watching him walk across the stage at graduation, diploma in hand, filled me with pride, not just for Marcus, but for what his success represented, the possibility of change. But as much as I celebrated Marcus's achievements, I couldn't ignore the darker forces at play in our community. The gang that Julian had joined was growing more powerful, infiltrating schools and recruiting vulnerable students. Their leader, Victor, was a notorious figure whose influence extended far beyond crime. He controlled local businesses, bribed officials, and silenced anyone who dared to oppose him. For years, the town had lived in fear of his wrath, too afraid to speak out or take action. Then, one day, everything changed. A former student of mine, Elena, came to me with shocking news. She revealed that Victor was planning to expand his operations, targeting younger recruits, including some of my current students. "You're the only one who can stop him," she said, her voice filled with desperation. "If anyone can expose the truth, it's you." Her words weighed heavily on me. I knew that confronting Victor would be dangerous, that it could cost me my job, my safety, or even my life. But I also knew that staying silent would mean betraying everything I stood for as a teacher. I reminded myself of why I had chosen this path to fight for justice, not just for my students, but for everyone who had been wronged by the system. Determined to act, I began gathering evidence of Victor's crimes. I reached out to former students, colleagues, and community members, piecing together a web of corruption that stretched far beyond what I had imagined. There were moments when fear threatened to paralyze me, when the enormity of the task ahead seemed insurmountable. But I reminded myself of Marcus's story, of the countless other students whose futures depended on someone standing up for them. With the help of a trusted journalist, I published a series of exposes detailing Victor's illegal activities. The articles gained national attention, sparking outrage and prompting investigations into his empire. As the truth came to light, the town began to rise against him. Parents, teachers, and students united, demanding accountability and justice. In the end, Victor was arrested, his organization dismantled, and his grip on the community broken. The victory was bittersweet. While I was proud of what we had accomplished, I couldn't forget the lives that had been lost along the way, the students who had fallen victim to Victor's schemes, the families torn apart by violence and fear. But amidst the pain, there was hope. The movement we had sparked didn't just bring down a criminal, it inspired a new generation of leaders, activists, and change-makers. To honor those who had suffered, I founded an organization dedicated to empowering youth in underserved communities. I called it Rise Together, a name that reflected my belief in the power of unity and resilience. Through the organization, I provided resources, mentorship, and advocacy to students navigating similar challenges. I also launched educational programs to teach leadership, civic engagement, and conflict resolution, ensuring that young people had the tools they needed to create positive change. One of the students I helped was Sophia, a bright and ambitious girl whose father had been killed in a gang-related shooting. When I first met her, she was angry and withdrawn, convinced that the world was against her. Together, we worked to channel her pain into purpose, helping her find her voice and pursue her dreams. Watching her graduate at the top of her class and deliver a speech about overcoming adversity brought tears to my eyes. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a leader, a beacon of hope for others. Another individual, Daniel, shared a story eerily similar to Marcus's. His older brother had also been recruited by a gang, leaving him feeling trapped and hopeless. When he learned about Rise Together, he reached out for support. Together, we helped him navigate the challenges of adolescence, connect with mentors, and envision a future beyond the confines of his circumstances. His gratitude reinforced my belief that the work we were doing was making a difference, not just for individuals, but for families and communities as well. As Rise Together grew, so did my sense of purpose. I realized that Victor's reign of terror hadn't just left me a legacy of pain, it had given me the tools to transform it into something meaningful. His actions forced me to confront truths I might otherwise have avoided, pushing me to grow in ways I never imagined. And while I'll never fully understand why he chose to live the way he did, I've come to accept that his choices don't define me. Instead, they've shaped me into the person I am today, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to make a difference. But building Rise Together wasn't without its challenges. There were moments when I questioned whether I was strong enough to carry the weight of so many stories, so much pain. There were times when the memories of Victor's threats and the losses we endured threatened to overwhelm me, pulling me back into the darkness. But I reminded myself of why I started this journey, to create a better future, not just for myself, but for others. Through the students I met, I discovered something profound. Healing isn't a linear process. It's messy, unpredictable, and often painful, but it's also transformative. By sharing our stories, supporting one another, and taking steps toward change, we can reclaim our power and rewrite our narratives. That realization became the foundation of Rise Together, not just as an organization, but as a movement. Looking back, I realized that Victor didn't just leave me a legacy of fear, he gave me the tools to transform it into something meaningful. His actions forced me to confront truths I might otherwise have avoided, pushing me to grow in ways I never imagined. And while I'll never fully understand why he chose to live the way he did, I've come to accept that his choices don't define me. Instead, they've shaped me into the person I am today, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to make a difference. Through Rise Together, I've learned that power isn't about control or revenge, it's about creating opportunities for others to thrive. It's about using your pain to fuel positive change, to lift others up when they feel like they can't stand on their own. And it's about recognizing that, no matter how broken you feel, you have the ability to rebuild not just your life, but the lives of those around you. If you're watching this and feeling powerless, remember, your voice matters. You have the power to turn it into purpose, to create something beautiful out of something broken. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more inspiring stories, and let's rewrite our legacies together.